Hi, Mom. There you are. Okay, I wasn't sure. All right. Okay. Welcome everyone to this month's episode of our live Q&A. So just to remind you, if you have questions, you can raise your hand and come off mute and ask it live, or you can put questions in the chat and my mom will run the chat. And we've also got the questions that came through in the intervening weeks. So if I don't hear from anyone, I will just go over those questions. So let's start by introducing my co-host, Mom. Hi, Mom. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. What's going on?
Well, we just got back from our trip visiting you,
Right.
Seth and Sophia too.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. We had two separate things going on. So first, you and Jim and Sophia were gone to her archery tournament, and you had given us the scoring app. So while she was competing, we were busy refreshing the app, like we were trying to get Taylor Swift tickets or something. We just kept refreshing. So that was a lot of fun. And then at home, Seth had invited us to keep him company to watch the dogs and the frogs and the geckos that he had brought home from school. So that was fun. Now the dogs have me well trained, so I know how to take care of them basically. And then I learned how to take care of the dark frogs and the geckos, and that was a lot of fun. And then Seth left for a trip and Sophia came back. So then we got to spend a little bit of time with her before we came back. So that was a lot of fun. So
it was definitely, it was two very distinct trips, like two very distinct things that were happening. And, you know, one of the things I was thinking about when we were at the archery tournament is that there were so many kind of leadership lessons from archery. And so I'm going to try to kind of think through what I want to, you know, how I want to share that. But there was one in particular. I mean, it was super windy. So the archery tournament was in Iowa, and it was super windy on the second day. And, you know, I was just thinking to myself about how, like, the archers that, you know, they can't wait for the perfect conditions. Like they have to make decisions to shoot when they're at the line, because there's a timer going and you have to do it. And so I just thought that one in particular really stuck with me. It's like so many people want to just analyze and want to wait till everything's right. And you can't do that. You have to just do the best you can in the conditions that you have and be decisive. And so that was, you know, that's of course what the archers did. So I just thought there are a lot of leadership lessons there that I have to kind of digest and think through how I want to share those with the membership. So, okay, well, I will take you off mute because off of video, because I know that's your preference. And oops, sorry. Let's see. You are the main one. Let me pin myself. There we go. Okay, I got it right this time. You'd think I think this might be, so we've got September will be our 1-year anniversary. So we've done this like 11 times, and you'd think by now that I'd have this whole process down pat, but I do not. So here we are once again. Okay, so let me just kind of go through our intro stuff here, and then we'll get to the questions. So what happened since the last month in the membership? So posted a few topics of the week. So how do you find purpose at work? What are some effective ways to stay updated with industry advancements for your industry? And then have you ever faced criticism or backlash for advocating for your team's needs? So those are topics that I posted. As always, you can reply to any of those if the mood strikes you. Maybe I'll double click on the finding purpose at work, because that has come up a lot with many of you, asking me about that. And I really think that people try to get their job to do too many things. So you're trying to, it's going to deliver your wages. You are trying to have a social outlet there. You may be looking for a romantic partner there. There's all these different things that you're trying to make happen in this one environment. And I understand we all spend most of our days at work. We spend a lot of time at work, so I can see the desire to try to have it fulfill all of these different needs that we have. but I really think it's too tall of an order. And so what I think you should consider, and what has really worked for me, is focusing on finding purpose and fulfillment outside of work, really exploring what the things that you care about, what brings meaning to you, and pursuing those things. So in my case, it's service. I've always been, as far as I can remember, and Mom, I'm assuming I somehow got this from you and Dad somehow, but I've always been one to volunteer. And so right out of college, I was volunteering in my local community because I didn't know anybody. And it was an organization called Pittsburgh Cares. And one of my favorite things that I did was called Safety for Seniors. So senior citizens would sign up, and a small team of us would come in. We'd sort of just walk around their house and see any obvious safety hazards. So throw rugs were always a big thing. There's always like these little there's always a throw rug in the kitchen, and it's just a slipping hazard. So we would either take those away, roll them up and put them in their closet, or we would, in some cases, get like a sticky backing that would make it stay on the floor. And then the other thing that was always there is like these really kind of older version extension cords. People would have, and they'd have like 10 things sticking out of this, and the cords would be all over the place. And so we'd untangle all that stuff and then take out the things, because it was like, plugged into another plug so we would get rid of electrical hazards. And then oftentimes we would install it's like a handrail, like maybe in the bathroom or something like that. But anyway, so I just fondly remembering doing the Safety for Seniors, but volunteering was something that was really important to me. So I did that, and that gave me a social outlet. It helped me find purpose. And that eventually led to serving on a board. And now I serve on 3 boards, and I'm very proud to say I'm the chair-elect for a very large nonprofit here in East Tennessee. So I'll be the chairman of that board soon. But I found purpose outside of work, but because I was having that being fulfilled, I was able to really bring some of that into work. So one, my own sense of purpose, my own sense of fulfillment being, that brings less stress, that brings more happiness, more a contentment. So I'm a more content employee, but then I'm also bringing like these things that I'm learning out in the community, and mindsets and new points of view, bringing those into my work, which added to increasing the sense of purpose and fulfillment at work. So I think those things can reinforce each other. But oftentimes it's easier to focus on things outside of work first and get that sense of fulfillment. And then you can bring that with you when you come into the job. So that's just something that I just wanted to share with you. And again, if you want to jump into that topic in the forum, feel free. In terms of content, no matter how I try not to add new content, because I know you guys already have tons of content, I added something new anyway. And so the main reason I do that is just because when I'm working with when I'm working with clients one-on-one, I will often design and build tools for them just on the fly as I'm working with them, because if one person has this question, there's a high likelihood that it's going to be of value to somebody else. So it's like, once I build the tool and I just put it in the membership, because it's like, you all get everything. And also it's basically a repository for me. So if I go to look for something. So anyway, that's part of the reason why I can't help but continue to add content. But last month I added the RACI Matrix, which is a very simple but highly powerful tool to help you identify the roles and responsibilities of stakeholders in any kind of project or initiative that you're working on. And when you do that, you get clear on who needs to know what, who needs to be consulted in decisions and things like that. Once you get really clear on that and document that, it makes the mode of operating and executing in your project much easier. It helps your stakeholders stay aligned, And that is really important because communication errors are a huge failure point for a lot of projects, whether it be causing the project to just completely fail or causing delays or cost overruns, things like that. Studies show that communication gaps and errors is a big contributor to that. So this really simple tool can help you to not have that happen, because you're clear on who needs to know what, who needs to actually weigh in on decisions and things like that. So highly encourage you to take a look at the RACI matrix. I included in the cheat sheet. So I gave you the cheat sheet. It comes with a little introduction about the RACI matrix. It's got some blank pages, so you can just use it. It's a simple table, but I've also got at least 2, I don't remember, it might be 3, but at least 2 examples of how you might use that in different settings. So, and in fact, the reason I made it was I was actually working with a coaching client who's in the performing arts. So I'm doing some work with Georgia Tech. And so I have some coaching clients that aren't necessarily PhD scientists and engineers like most of you. And so they work across different fields at Georgia Tech University. And so she's in the theater arts. And so I helped her with that using a RACI matrix for a program that she was working on. So that's the new content. The other thing, just a reminder, I did start office hours. So I have 2 open time slots. Very informal. You can just drop in if you have a question. You just want to bounce an idea off of me. You can drop in anytime. They are not recorded. I am not wearing makeup and or anything like that. So it's very informal. One is Monday mornings at 8:15 Eastern time. The other time is Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So really hoping to bridge. I know we've got multiple time zones in the membership, but if you want to just drop in and ask me a question or just say hi. The other thing, and it's something new that I learned, and I'll write some, I'll do some more content about this later, but the other thing you could do is what I've learned is called body doubling. So body doubling, it's a tactic that is widely used in the attention deficit disorder community. So folks that really have a hard time focusing and concentrating, is to simply schedule a time with another person to do activities. You don't even have to do the same activities, just having someone else there in your field of vision, in our case, or in your physical space, if you're doing it one-on-one, helps people, whether you have ADHD or not, it helps people to just focus on their task at hand. And so I've participated in some of these. They're often called co-working sessions, where the moderator will just be there and you just kind of come in and you might put in the chat, I'm going to work on this. And then you just, the feed's open, you're just sitting there and you work on your thing and then you're done. And it, for whatever reason, I think, the science is still a little bit unclear about why this works, but studies have shown that this kind of co-working / body doubling, whatever you'd like to call it, can really help you be more productive. So you would be welcome to just drop in and say, hey, Angelique, I don't have any questions. I know you're going to be here for the next 45 minutes and I have to get this thing done. So I want to just jump on here with you and work together. So, because that's what I do. I just, if nobody, while I'm waiting for people to drop in, if nobody drops in, I just do my own work. In fact, I typically am working on my newsletters. So that's what I'm doing while I'm just waiting for anybody to jump in. So that is another new thing that has happened. Okay, so now I am going to jump into the questions. And so the first question is, what are some effective methods for dealing with workplace stress and burnout? Okay, great question. So there's a couple of different things that you can do. So you can delegate, so kind of try to reduce your own workload by leveraging delegation. I just posted something on LinkedIn about the process of delegation and how to do that. So Mom, if you don't mind making a note, I will link that into the show notes. So delegating is important. Using time management tools as best you can is important. But I think really the most important thing is actually prioritizing your own self-care, really making sure that you find things that help you to relax and recharge and renew, and actually making those things a priority. I find that many high achievers like yourselves don't do that. You either think it's frivolous, or you think it's you shouldn't need it. You think you should just be able to tough it out, or you just allow everyone else's priorities to go before your own. And as a result, you end up burning out. Oftentimes, and it's an interesting thing, this has come up several times just in the last couple of weeks, oftentimes right before kind of burnout, you end up doing something that you perceive to be a waste of time. So the classic example, and I've got 3 male coaching clients right now in particular who all say, oh, I was trying to work on this, but then I ended up playing video games. And then they sort of sheepishly talk about how they are upset with themselves for playing video games. And what I would tell them, and what I want you to know too, is that when you do that, when you push really hard, when you're really trying to focus, you're trying to get a lot of work done, and then the next thing you know, you find yourself playing video games or scrolling on your phone or whatever, that is your brain telling you that it is out of bandwidth. It is done. You know what? I'm not going to think about that hard stuff right now. And it will force you into an activity that causes it to unwind a little bit. So what does that mean? So first of all, I think it's Gary Vaynerchuk, who's a marketing expert. He has this great saying, which says, don't pass judgment on other people's escapism, meaning it's not for me to tell you what you need to do to have your mind unwind. If it's playing video games, play video games. If it's surfing the internet, surf the internet. If it's, I actually like to walk around grocery stores and just sort of look at particularly different grocery stores and look at like the different foods and things like that. Is somehow it's just sort of, it's the right kind of stimulation that I need. I do that. So don't pass judgment on what that activity is that your mind is deciding it needs to do to unwind. So that's the first thing. Then the second part of that is, ideally, you would relax and recharge and renew on your own time, on your own schedule. You would control that rather than waiting till your body just says, I'm done. So that's why scheduling in small, short, or sometimes long, but scheduling in frequent times to renew and recharge. And maybe it is playing video games, or maybe you decide you do something else, proactively, but proactively scheduling in those times, it's much better for you in terms of just managing your overall schedule, your priorities, your deadlines. If you actually can proactively put those in rather than waiting for your body to just do it for you. So, I have a pretty, I don't think it's complicated, but I have a multi-step, kind of self-care program. In the mornings, I focus on my exercise, my meditation. I have a specific meal that I have earlier in the day that really helps me feel energized. And then in the evening, I might do some journaling. I definitely play games on my phone to help me unwind. Might watch a little TV. Those are kind of my two, that's how I book in my day. Typically in the afternoons, I'm usually pretty steady, but maybe I need to take a little break. I might go for a walk around the neighborhood, something like that. But because I'm intentional and proactive about how I start and end my day, that keeps me from just all of a sudden realizing, oh, I haven't gotten anything done for 2 hours because my brain has decided, that it just cannot focus on these things. So that's really what you need to do, is proactively put those things in. And it takes some trial and error to figure out what really works for you. meditation, exercise, yoga, those are all some standard things that, that are often touted, breathing exercises, listening to music. I mean, there's a ton of different things that are well-established ways to relax and recharge, and you do some trial and error and figure out what it is that works for you. But the real main point here is that, one, it is absolutely a normal and positive thing to do. It's not frivolous. It's not a waste of time. And two, it's better to do it proactively so that you have some control over when it happens and you can organize yourself around those periods, rather than finding yourself that your body took the self-care for you, and you're, feeling like a failure because you've just sort of, you've lost half a day. You planned to do something, but now you can't because your brain said, nope, can't do it. So those are the main things that I have about stress. The others being delegate and some time management. How can I leverage technology and digital tools to enhance my productivity and efficiency? Okay. There are tons of wonderful tools out there, and I'm not going to tell you, well, I'll tell you the tools that I use, but they are personal preference. And so that's really the first thing I want to say about digital tools and technology, is that it really comes down to personal preference. And so how can you select the right things for yourself? Because I really think that's the key point. Oftentimes people will say, I've tried this, I've tried this, I've tried this, I've tried that. And they might, start to feel like there's something wrong with them because none of these tools are quote unquote working. And the reality of the situation is that they're all just kind of personal preference. So really the most important thing to do is to understand what it is you want to manage and understand the way that you work. The best ways that are you a visual person? Do you want to see like lots of colors? Do you want to see, do you want to be able to check things off? Or do you want to see just what's ahead of you? Do you want to share this with other people? Do you want to be able to do things by hand? Are you a paper and pen type of person? Are you, what are your preferred ways of working? It's much better to think about what you want and then just Google to find some options that kind of fit what it is you're looking for, than to go after the hottest tool of the day and then try to change all of your habits in order to make this tool work. That ends up typically not working. Either you drop it because you don't like it, or worst case scenario, it doesn't actually, help you be more productive. It actually takes more time to use, even after the learning curve. So that is what I suggest you do is just do a little bit of self-reflection about what is it? Why am I feeling unproductive? Why am I feeling not efficient? In what specific areas? Is it meetings? Is it managing your to-do list? Is it managing follow-up? There's different things that fit into the efficiency and productivity bucket. So really think about what it is that you want help with. And then also think about how you like to interact with tools. Yeah, as I said, do you want to write on your iPad? Do you want to type things out? Do you want a to-do list? Do you want it on a calendar? Do you want it to be something that you share with other people? Those are some features to the different tools. And once you kind of think through a little bit about what would work best for you, you will find something that will hit 90% of the features that you're looking for. And you can probably get it for free just because there's so many tools out there at this point. So, and then let's see, I'm just looking around my own office space here. So what are the things that I do? So I'm really on the Google platform. So I primarily use Google Calendar I do a lot of my productivity is calendar based. In fact, I can maybe share my calendar real quick, see if I can get this up just so you could kind of see what it looks like. I'll move out in a couple of, yeah, let me pull this up. Share my calendar. Okay. So this just kind of is what my calendar looks like. It's color coded, so the colors mean different things. My kids are purple, just so you know. And my own personal productivity time, where I just focus on my own things, are yellow. Clients are green. Membership related stuff is dark blue. So I mean, you know, I do that. Block out certain times. I also, you know, things in my husband's travel, stuff like that is on the calendar. So those are, that's one thing that I rely heavily on for productivity. I also use Google Tasks. So I do try to jot down, you know, tasks that are upcoming, particularly recurring tasks or tasks that are out way in the future. So for example, after I've done you know, my taxes and filled out all my annual reports and all this business related documentation that only happens kind of once a year. Soon as I finish it, I make a task for the next year so that I know it's coming and can start planning and things like that. So I use Google Tasks. I also use Google Assistant a lot. So I do like text to speech. Speech to text, excuse me. So I do a lot of just, hey, Google, and I probably, yeah, I just activated it, unfortunately, and just start talking, have it keep notes for me. I use Google Keep, which is the notes app. I use that a lot, particularly for snippets of text. So I end up sending you know, lots of emails have very similar text in them, particularly with clients. You know, they all want a bio, they all want a headshot, or they want to know my availability or something like that. And so I will often make just write that email once and then copy and paste it every time it comes up. I find that saves me a ton of time. Let's see, what other digital tools do I use? I think those are mainly it. Google Meet. Oh, I use Calendly because because I freelance. Most of the people that engage with me, or pretty much everybody that engages with me, we don't automatically get to see each other's calendars. So I use Calendly to send a link so that people can see my availability and then match it with their own and then schedule time with me. Obviously we use Zoom a lot to schedule meetings. And I think those are the main kind of digital tools that I use. I also, I keep my notes. I handwrite my notes in meetings. I still find that helps me. And then I also keep just a little, whatever, you know, you can tend to get tons of little mini notepads from doctor's office or whatever. I keep those around. I just have those nearby. And oftentimes I just jot down a task that comes up, and then I will put it into my digital tasks like at the end of the day. So those are kind of my own personal productivity tools. Those of you that have been with me for a while know that I used to keep all of my tasks in a recipe box, and I finally went digital, largely because I kind of have these mobile offices or these like little offices all over town, basically. I work at the university and I work at the National Lab, and then I work here and then in coffee shops and all that. And I was really starting to become afraid that I was going to leave that recipe box somewhere. So I did decide to go digital with my tasks. And yeah, I just use the Google Tasks that's embedded with the Google Suite. So those are my personal digital tools. And then, as I said, I think really the key to actually having these digital tools work for you is to do a little bit of an assessment on what areas are you struggling with, where you don't feel productive, and how you like to work. What are just the natural habits, work habits that you have, and then finding a tool, just Googling a tool that has that specific focus and those kind of features that you're looking for. And then you have something that works with you, as opposed to basically something of learning how to use a new tool and incorporating it into a habit now becomes a burden. if you don't do it that way. And very, very often those don't stick with people. So, okay, how can I best prepare for my performance review? Okay, so that's a good question. I just made a video on this, and I'm actually going to put the link to that video in the chat too, because in the show notes, because that is my son's first video. So my son is working for me as a summer intern, and this is he just did a video on performance reviews for me, and I'm very excited and proud to have you all take a look at it. So I will put the link to the video, his video, in the notes, but I'll also answer the question now. So performance reviews. So first, personally, I have always hated to receive performance reviews. I've had some pretty traumatic events in performance reviews a couple of times. And so, they've always just been completely nerve-wracking for me. But I think that they are important. And they're important for the organization for sure to do. They need to collect data on how people are doing. That helps them with succession planning. That helps them with compensation. And helps them with training and development. So from the organization standpoint, it is important to collect this data. But for you as the employee, they can be, if you do your part, they can be really informative and useful tools. And unfortunately, in most organizations, they're not. They're kind of just check the box types of things. But if you're willing to put a little of effort into them, you can really get something out of them. So that's kind of what I want to talk about right now, is like, how can you get the most out of it? So a couple of things that you want to do is, one, I mean, you obviously want to put your best foot forward. But you also want to get useful feedback to kind of help you figure out where you are in your organization, figure out where you are with your own development, and kind of think about, well, what do I need to do next? So for putting your best foot forward, I strongly recommend that you go a little bit beyond the standard. This is the form that gets filled out for performance reviews. So most large organizations, medium to large organizations, have some system that they're using, some tool where you set the objectives at the beginning of the year, and then you update them, mid-year and maybe end of the year, and then it spits out, a summary. So do that, of course, fulfill that requirement, make sure that, because that is the record. I also think it's worth doing your own sort of high-level executive summary and really thinking through your key talking points. So this exchange that you're having with your boss isn't literally just reading exactly what's in there. So in that executive summary, make sure that you've highlighted what how your goals really match up with your results match up with the overall goals of the organization, as high as a level as you can get. Make sure that you clearly articulate that, even kind of reword it if it's already written in the objectives. Make sure that you can talk about how your work relates to the broader goals of the organization in a very fluent manner, and have just a brief executive summary there that you can go over with your supervisor. Prior to that, it's great to be getting feedback all along the way. So if you have some specific comments or input from other stakeholders that you can point to as you're having this conversation, that is also really good. Some organizations have a place where you can get peer raters or peer reviewers, or even other supervisors to actually give you input into the system. If you're able to do that, I think that's excellent. But if you don't have a formalized system like that, then just asking for feedback all along the way, and either jotting down the feedback that you get, or getting it in an email, that can be really helpful as well. On the day of the performance review, it's important to just take care of yourself. We were just talking about self-care. So you make sure you're relaxed, and make sure you have eaten well, and you're hydrated, and that you're dressed comfortably, because it can be a really stressful time, even if you're fully expecting it to go great. as which I imagine most of you are, it can still be pretty stressful. So it's good to just be relaxed, as relaxed and calm as you can be. And then, the other thing is to be really clear with yourself about the feedback that you're getting. Make sure that, positive or negative, that you recognize what it is. It's talking about your past performance and you're focused on the future. So to the extent that you can get as much clarity as you can about the feedback that you're getting, ask follow-up questions, but also say, okay, for example, this was all great feedback, but I'm, for the job that I did last year, but I want to move forward or maybe take on more responsibilities. So don't just sort of become complacent and say, okay, well, I don't need to do anything because I'm great. Similarly, if it was a tough feedback session, remember that it's for things you did in the past. And so don't beat yourself up over that. Take that as, okay, what I need to do differently in the future. The other thing that I find often happens in performance reviews is that, leaders don't really get a lot of training on how to do these well. And so oftentimes the feedback you get is pretty vague. And so the key question I think you should have in your mind, and you should be willing and ready to ask at all stages of this performance review, is, can you give me an example of the behavior that you're talking about? So whether it's a positive thing, you say, okay, can you give me a little bit more of an example of what you're talking about, any specifics, whether it be behavior you've done or even behavior that others are doing that you might want to emulate in the future. And the same with some criticism, like, can you give me a specific example of the feedback of the behavior that you're talking about? Again, whether it be your own behavior or the behavior of others, because really, until it becomes kind of specific and actionable, you're just sort of left pinging back and forth about, okay, am I good or bad? And that's not especially productive place to be. So really focusing on specifics. The other thing I will say, and these are when I go back to some of the traumatic events that I've had, where I had, a performance review that didn't go very well, and I asked for specifics. And he was like, I can't really think of any. And it's like, okay, if somebody's giving you some negative feedback and they can't give you any specific examples, then you may want to consider just putting that feedback on the shelf. I mean, there may be something else going on there. And, you don't need to feel bad about yourself or even action upon something that is really nebulous and intangible. So you may just want to kind of file that and see if you can go collect some additional information before you start to do anything really different. So that's the other piece of performance reviews, is really focusing on getting as specific examples as you can. You're probably going to have to ask for them, because leaders are often not very good at that. It's like, oh, you're doing great. Keep doing what you're doing. I mean, it's or they're put under pressure basically to match that bell curve that, and so you might just be like, oh, sorry, you didn't quite meet expectations. And like, well, can you tell me why? Like, no, and it's just because they were kind of forced to, somebody had to go, in the below average. And so you really do need to press for specifics. Okay. It says, I'm looking for my next role. How can I think about what to apply for? Yes. So there's a couple of things that I like to think about when I think about job search. One is to do as much informational interviewing as you can, even if you don't have a clear idea of roles. You may even want to just start with your own internal network. And if you see anybody who's doing anything that you think could be interesting, to just touch base with them and say, hey, I'd like to learn a little bit more about what you do. Can you give me some specifics? Can you give me an overview of what you're working on, and what skills are important, and how do you like your day-to-day and things like that. I definitely think collecting information is really important. And then I suggest you start quite broad. I mean, I was working with someone a couple of weeks ago, and in his mind, he was only qualified for roles that were like the very next level rung up in his exact vertical, his exact area of expertise. And that's not the way that leaders really see things. So when you have more broad leadership experience, so for example, controlling budgets, managing projects, managing people, those are things that cross across many different types of roles. And so if you're interested in taking a role that's, outside of your exact vertical, absolutely consider applying for those roles when you have some of these general management experiences under your belt, because people will look to that for, director, VP level, and, those kind of leadership roles, look for examples of those sorts of skills in other verticals. The other thing, and this is especially true for those of us with advanced degrees, because we're so specialized, we tend to think that that you're going to have to go backwards and get more credentials and certifications in order to be specialized in another area. And again, this is where I go back to the leadership skills. That's why having broad leadership skills are really important, because once you get to a certain level, those paper credentials in terms of certificates or degrees, things like that in specific areas, are much less important than demonstrating leadership abilities. And so anybody, in this group who's watching this, I would encourage you to assume that you can get a lateral job or a next level up job across adjacent industries. Do not assume you have to go backwards because you're potentially going into a different industry or a different vertical. I think that's really a limiting belief that I'm trying to get all of you to abandon, because I see so many like, well, I was director of something in this area, and I want to go over here, but I'm sure I'll have to be a senior manager first. I can't go straight to director, and I'll have to go back and get a certificate. And I see, no, that's not really how the job market works in most fields. If you want to stay highly technical individual contributor, possibly you may need to actually get some credentialing in whatever that other subject matter expertise is. But if you're going from a leader in one area to a leader in another area, they're primarily looking for leadership skills and the ability to learn new things in these other industries, which, pretty much all of us who have these advanced degrees have demonstrated we have the capacity to learn. So you already know how to learn. You just need to be able to demonstrate to the hiring managers that you're willing to learn new areas and demonstrate, maybe even talk a little bit about what your process would be. And in fact, I think one of the questions in the forum that I put in there is, how do you keep up on industry advancements? So that's a great way to kind of answer that. You say, oh, okay, well, I see that you've worked in my case, I'll just use myself as an example. I worked in the aluminum industry for many years, and I rose to a executive level leader. Now I'm transitioning to the stainless steel industry as an executive level leader. I don't know anything about, that industry. I don't know anything about that material from a scientific standpoint, but I've demonstrated that I understand how to lead large technical organizations, and I can articulate my process, my methodology for leading large complex technical organizations, and my process for getting myself up to speed on industry benchmarks, megatrends, those sorts of things. So it was much more about my ability to articulate my methodologies, my leadership skills, how I've demonstrated that, how I could do it in this new context, than it was about, what is the different melting point of the two different metals and those sorts of things. So, and do I need to go back, do I need to go take a short course in corrosion for stainless steel? No, I do not, because at my level, I just need to demonstrate that I can learn from my experts in that area. So anyway, that's just kind of the mindset that I want you to have is when it comes to thinking about positioning yourself for different roles. So so just to kind of summarize, first, it's about becoming aware of different roles, learning about what different roles actually do. So that's where I think informational interviewing can really come in handy, because as much as, details on a job description, it can in fact be very different from the actual day-to-day work. And what you're looking for is, well, I like my job most days, not the title, not this sort of description on the piece of paper, but will I actually enjoy doing this on a daily basis? So getting that awareness through informational interviewing. And then the second piece is really thinking about positioning yourself. Again, highly educated folks like us who have leadership skills under our belts should be looking for lateral or up positions, and not think of yourself as needing to go backwards in positioning, unless you are truly going for a completely technical individual contributor role, which is totally fine, by the way. There's plenty of people who try, work in a leadership role and decide that's not for them, and decide they prefer individual contributing. So, but just saying that's kind of the way you need to think about positioning yourself in terms of the level of the role that you're going after. Let's see. So those were all the questions that I had. We're a little bit short, but I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. So what is coming up in the accelerator? So I mentioned it in the weekly email that I sent out on Saturday, but I have been working on what I call the Leaders Operating System. So this is really a set of tools and workflows that leaders can use to really manage the day-to-day operations of their organization. So if you think about a leader, typically we have things of our own subject matter expertise, projects that we are accountable for. Then we are collaborating on other people's projects. So for example, maybe marketing has a project and you're providing some expertise there. And then you've got your organization to run. You've got performance management, you've got objectives, you have to manage your facilities, you've got to manage your budgeting, you've got to manage. So all of those things, it's just around leading an organization, regardless of the domain, the subject matter expertise, et cetera. And so I have built my own system for doing that. Developed my own set of tools and workflows and meetings and templates and things like that. I done that for myself and was using it very effectively in both my previous executive roles. And I've been slowly kind of making those more user-friendly to people other than me. As you can imagine, my spreadsheets were highly customized to what we talked about earlier, my habits, my workflows, et cetera. And I've been working on making those a lot more user-friendly and maybe even simplified, so people can just say, you start here, maybe get you 75% of the way there, and then helping you customize them. So I've been working on that. I'm rolling it out with my private one-on-one coaching clients, and they've been pretty happy with it. So I'm working on just kind of putting that together and putting it in the membership. There's some training around it that I really need to do to kind of make sure people understand what's going on. But the idea there is that, I think it takes an executive about 25% of their time to manage their operations, manage their one-on-ones, managing their project updates, managing their performance reviews, their budgeting, their strategy work. All of that should take about 25% of your time. And then the other 75% of your time is around actually executing, your work, your more domain expertise, your leadership expertise on behalf of the organization. And so I'm working on getting that system up and going so that so I can share it with you all. Gosh, I was thinking, what's the timeline for that? Good question. I think it's probably going to roll it out in pieces and hopefully have something maybe in November to start with. And then it probably take a couple of months to get the full system. I think I'll do a roadmap similar to how I've done the personal leadership roadmap. I'll do a roadmap type of approach here so that I can get you the pieces as they become available. So that is all I have for today. Our next meeting will be August 16th. So I hope that you all enjoyed this, and I will talk to you all soon. Okay, bye.